Welcome to the deep dive. Today we're looking at John D. Rockefeller, but maybe not just the wealth aspect.
Right, not just the money.
We're digging into how he built it, thinking him as a master, like the technology of his time.
Exactly. Operational efficiency, strategic integration. These were his tools, like process innovation on a massive scale.
Yeah, absolutely. And for this deep dive, we've pulled from, well, quite a few places. History sites, the Rockefeller Foundation itself, financial experts.
A good mix. And the aim is to see how his approach, stage by stage, showed these, technology skills. What did he gain? And crucially, what can you, listening today, take away from it all?
We're tracing it through about 7 key phases.
Sounds good. Where do we start?
Let's dive right into stage 1. His early days, getting into the oil rush. He was born 1839, upstate New York, but the family moved to Cleveland.
Right, Cleveland's key later on.
And even as a kid, he seemed pretty industrious. Raising turkeys, selling candy. Sounds like the classic story.
But the first real job, that's interesting. At 16, assistant bookkeeper for a produce firm in Cleveland.
And apparently he was really good at figuring out transportation costs.
See, that's it. Even then,
Yeah.
that little detail shows that operational thinking, that focus on logistics and efficiency, it's foundational.
So he gets that experience. Then at 20, this is 1859, he starts his own produce commission business with partners.
And the timing with the Civil War. Wow. Demand for food and supplies went through the roof. They apparently made huge profits, like $450,000 in the first year.
That's serious money back then.
Yeah.
And that success likely set him up for the big pivot,
Which was?
1863. He invests in a Cleveland oil refinery, enters the game.
The pivotal moment. Okay, so looking at just this early stage,
Yeah.
what are those signs of his tech skills?
Well, like you said, that knack for calculating transport costs. That's early logistics focus.
Definitely one.
And 2, jumping into oil refining when it was still pretty new.
Yeah.
Identifying that emerging market.
Good point. Spotting the wave.
And 3, doing it with partners right away. Understanding he needed collaboration, needed capital to scale.
Makes sense. And the benefits in this phase?
Well, the money, obviously. That $450 K gave him a launch pad.
Financial freedom.
Plus, that bookkeeping job gave him real hands-on experience with how businesses actually run, the systems, the numbers.
Invaluable practical knowledge.
And of course, getting into oil early positioned him perfectly for what came next.
Right place, right time, with the right skills brewing.
So for entrepreneurs listening, what are the takeaways from phase 1?
I'd say 3 things. First, really master the fundamentals. Understand the basic economics of your field, inside and out.
Know your numbers.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Second, keep your eyes open for emerging markets. Be ready to adapt and jump in when you see potential.
Don't be afraid of the new thing.
And third, don't underestimate partnerships. Collaboration can bring in capital, expertise. It helps you scale faster. Okay, so he is in oil. What's next? The Cleveland scene.
Yep, the Cleveland Conquest, you could call it. By 1865, he controls the largest refinery in Cleveland.
Already. Okay.
Then, 1870, he forms Standard Oil of Ohio. Big hitters involved.
Yeah.
His brother William, Henry Flagler, and $1 million in capital.
$1 million in 1870 is a...
Wow.
And the name's Standard Oil.
Deliberate. It was meant to signal reliable quality, consistent product, building trust.
Smart branding even then.
And then things got intense. 1872, the so-called Cleveland Massacre.
Sounds dramatic.
It was. Standard Oil basically absorbed 22 of its 26 Cleveland competitors in less than 4 months.
22 out of 26. That's ruthless efficiency, rapid consolidation.
Pretty much wiped the board clean in Cleveland. So in this consolidation phase, what tech skills are on display?
Okay, first, that focus on standardizing quality. Making standard mean something reliable was key to building market confidence.
Right, consistency.
Second, the strategic acquisition. It wasn't just buying everyone, it was targeting competitors, likely less efficient ones, that they could integrate.
And third,
The integration itself. Not just buying companies, but actively improving their operations, bringing them up to standards level of efficiency. That's the hard part.
makes sense. And the benefits were huge, I assume.
Oh, yeah. Dominance in Cleveland, a major refining hub, check.
Control.
Massively increased efficiency from applying their methods across more facilities.
Economies of scale kicking in.
And obviously, dramatically reduced competition. Fewer price wars, more market stability, from their point of view anyway.
So lessons for today's entrepreneurs from this consolidation phase.
Standardize to build trust. Make your brand synonymous with reliability.
Essential.
Consider strategic consolidation, acquiring or merging not just for size, but to gain real scale efficiencies and market position.
Purposeful growth.
And critically, focus on integration. An acquisition is only as good as your ability to actually merge the operations and unlock those synergies. Don't just buy, integrate effectively.
Okay, so he's consolidated Cleveland. Where does he go from there?
Deeper, vertical integration, controlling the whole process.
Ah, right. Not just refining, but everything from like the barrel to the customer's lamp.
Exactly. Take barrels, for instance. Instead of buying them, they started making their own.
Seems small, but I bet it added up.
Hugely. It cut costs significantly, a classic example of controlling the inputs.
And then there were the railroads.
Right. Transportation costs were a major issue, unpredictable. So what did Rockefeller do?
He didn't just negotiate harder.
Nope. He invested in and built pipelines, an alternative transport network. That was a massive forward-thinking move.
Taking control of logistics.
Totally. By the 1870s, Standard Oil owned pipelines, they owned tank cars, they even had their own home delivery network, full vertical integration.
Wow, end-to-end control. So the technology skills in this vertical integration phase.
Manufacturing their own inputs, like the barrels, that's controlling the technical process of your supply chain.
Okay.
Developing alternative transport, the pipelines, that's investing in infrastructure, thinking long-term about logistics.
Future-proofing almost.
Kind of. And third, integrating all those logistics, owning the tank cars, the delivery network, ensuring smooth, controlled distribution.
And the benefits of going vertical like this.
Lower operating costs, for sure. Making your own barrels is cheaper.
Check.
Control over transportation. Less reliance on the railroads and their pricing whims. Huge advantage.
Independence.
And better supply chain reliability. When you control the pipes and the cars, you control the flow.
Makes sense. So takeaways for entrepreneurs from this.
Look at your critical inputs. Can you gain more control over them, maybe even produce them yourself?
Secure your supply chain.
Invest in infrastructure where it makes sense. Can you build something that reduces your dependence on others or lowers long-term costs, like those pipelines?
Think infrastructure.
And optimize your logistics. How does your product get from A to B to C? Owning or tightly controlling that chain can be a major efficiency driver. Okay, so he's built this integrated machine. How did he make it run even better?
Right, now we get into the relentless focus on efficiency and cost cutting that Standard Oil became famous for.
The nitty-gritty optimization.
Exactly. But it wasn't just cutting corners. They were incredibly innovative with byproducts, things other refiners just threw away.
Like what?
Well, gasoline, for one, often seen as waste back then, but Standard Oil apparently used it to fuel their own refineries.
Huh. Turning waste into fuel. Clever.
And they didn't stop there. They sold lubricating oil, petroleum jelly. Vaseline came from this paraffin wax, tar, naphtha, all stuff derived from crude oil that competitors were dumping.
So they weren't just refining kerosene, they were extracting value from every single fraction of the barrel.
Pretty much. It was incredibly resourceful. And this mindset went everywhere. Hiring their own plumbers to fix leaks faster and cheaper, building their own barrels, we mentioned. Meticulous cost control.
Leaving no stone unturned, the result must have been drastically lower production costs.
Absolutely. Their operational mastery drove costs down significantly. So the tech skills during this efficiency drive.
Okay, that innovative use of byproducts. That's pure process innovation. Rethinking the entire process to find hidden value.
Seeing waste as a resource.
Internalizing technical labor, like the plumbers. Optimizing even small support functions for cost and speed.
Controlling the details.
And overarching all of it.
Yeah.
That continuous drive for cost reduction, it wasn't a one-off project, it was embedded in the culture.
Relentless optimization. Benefits.
Higher profit margins, obviously. Less waste, lower costs equals more profit.
Makes sense.
Expanded product lines, those byproducts became new revenue streams.
More ways to make money.
And, importantly for their market growth, it allowed them to lower the price of their main product, kerosene, making it much more affordable for the average person.
So efficiency benefited the consumer, too, in a way. Interesting.
Yeah.
Lessons for entrepreneurs here.
Find value in your waste. What are you discarding or underutilizing that could be repurposed or sold?
Get creative with resources.
Constantly optimize your internal processes. Map them out, find the bottlenecks, improve workflows, never stop refining how you do things.
Continuous improvement.
And aim for cost leadership if it fits your strategy. Being the lowest cost producer gives you immense flexibility and competitive power. Okay, he's got this efficient, integrated machine. How does he solidify market dominance?
That brings us to 1882. and the creation of the Standard Oil Trust. This was a really big and, yeah, controversial move.
The trust, right. This is where things get legally complicated later on.
Definitely. But functionally, it brought all these different Standard Oil companies under unified control. Estimates say it controlled around 90% of U.S. refineries and pipelines at its peak.
90%, that's basically a monopoly.
Which is exactly what critics said, accusing them of crushing competition, unfair practices, all that. But you also have to note, this scale did contribute to keeping kerosene cheap and widely available.
A complex picture. And he innovated in market control too, didn't he? Something about certificates.
Yeah, they issued certificates against oil they held in storage. You could trade these certificates. It basically created the first oil futures market.
Whoa. Okay, that's pretty sophisticated financial engineering for the 1880s, influencing the market price through futures.
Exactly. So technology skills in this market control phase.
Well, creating the trust structure itself, that's organizational innovation on a grand scale, figuring out how to manage such a sprawling enterprise.
Designing the machine of management.
That strategic use of oil certificates, pioneering a financial instrument to manage inventory and influence prices. That's market mechanism innovation.
Financial tech, 19th century style.
And leveraging their storage capacity in those certificates to influence market supply and stability. Real strategic market management.
Benefits of the trust and these market strategies.
Centralized control, obviously.
Yeah.
Managing that huge network became possible.
Coordination.
Significant influence over pricing, indirectly through those futures and directly through their market share.
Market pen.
And from their viewpoint, greater market stability. Managing supply and demand on such a large scale smoothed out some volatility, though critics would argue it was imposed stability.
Right. Lessons for today's entrepreneurs from this.
Organizational design matters, especially as you scale. How you structure your company impacts your ability to manage complexity and execute strategy.
Structure follows strategy.
Don't be afraid to innovate in finance or market mechanisms if it helps manage risk or gives you a strategic edge. Think beyond just product innovation.
Financial and market tools count.
And deeply understand supply and demand in your market. How can you strategically manage inventory, production, or even market perception? Okay, so he built this empire. Then what? He pivots again, right?
Yes, a major shift. Around the mid-1890s, he steps back from the day-to-day running of Standard Oil. He starts focusing heavily on philanthropy.
Influenced by Andrew Carnegie's ideas about the gospel of wealth.
Seems likely, yeah.
Yeah.
And the scale was immense. He ended up donating over $500 million in his lifetime. Adjusted for inflation, that's staggering.
Billions and billions in today's money. Where did it go?
Not just scattered donations. He funded the creation of major, lasting institutions. University of Chicago, for one.
A world-class university, built substantially with his money.
And the Rockefeller Institute for Medical Research, which is now Rockefeller University. Again, a powerhouse in science. He was building knowledge infrastructure.
And he brought that same systematic approach from business to giving, didn't he?
Absolutely. It wasn't just charity. It was strategic, data-driven philanthropy. They researched problems, targeted interventions, measured results. Very different from earlier forms of giving.
Applying business principles to social good. Any big public health examples?
The campaign against hookworm in the American South is a classic. A massive organized effort funded by his foundation that had a huge impact on public health there, almost wiped it out.
Wow. A tangible, large-scale success. So technology skills in philanthropy.
Founding those scientific institutions that's investing in the infrastructure of research and knowledge creation, long-term thinking, building platforms for discovery.
That systematic, data-driven approach to giving itself, that was an innovation in how philanthropy operated, applying strategy and efficiency.
The tech of effective giving.
And those targeted public health campaigns, like Hookworm. Organized, goal-oriented efforts using evidence. That's strategic execution.
Makes sense. Benefits of this philanthropic stage.
Huge advancements in medical science came out of the institutions he funded.
Lasting scientific contribution.
Major improvements in public health, like the Hookworm example shows. Real impact on people's lives.
Tangible benefits.
And he established these enduring institutions, universities, research centers, that are still major players today.
Built to last. Lessons for entrepreneurs thinking about giving back.
Consider investing in R&D and knowledge creation. Supporting fundamental research can have massive long-term payoffs for society.
Fund the future.
Apply data and strategy to your impact efforts. Maximize your effectiveness, measure your results. Be as smart about giving as you are about business.
Strategic impact.
And think about tackling systemic challenges. Where can your resources make a big structural difference on a large-scale problem? Okay, that brings us towards the end. His legacy.
Yeah, looking back, it's this dual legacy, isn't it? Unprecedented industrial success built on innovation.
And then groundbreaking, systematic philanthropy on a scale never seen before.
He fundamentally changed the oil industry with his corporate structures and relentless efficiency. Then he used that wealth to create a model for modern targeted philanthropy.
And that model lives on. The Rockefeller Foundation is still a major force, right? Promoting well-being, finding and scaling solutions.
Exactly. And it's amazing to see them still innovating, collaborating with organizations like the World Health Organization on things like pandemic intelligence hubs, digital health tools, very current issues.
Shows the enduring relevance. And the family's philanthropy continues too, adapting over generations.
It does. They continue to leverage their networks and resources for social impact, sometimes even critically examining the origins of the wealth itself. It's an evolving legacy.
So the technology skills reflected in this enduring legacy.
The institutional models themselves, the foundations operate based on those principles of strategy and data he pioneered. They are enduring structures. The organizational tech lasted.
The continued focus on data and innovation within those institutions, like the WHO collaboration shows, the culture of seeking new solutions persists.
Still innovating.
And the adaptability across generations. The ability of the family's philanthropic efforts to evolve their focus while sticking to core principles shows resilience.
Adapting the mission. The benefits of this long legacy.
Just a massive, lasting global impact on health, education, science. It's hard to overstate.
Truly world-changing.
His systematic approach heavily influenced how modern philanthropy works, providing a model for others.
Shaped the field.
And the continued relevance today. His name, his foundations, they're still actively working on today's big global challenges.
Still part of the conversation. Final lessons for entrepreneurs then from this long view.
Think about building institutions, not just companies. Create structures and principles that can endure and have impact beyond your own tenure.
Held for longevity.
Maintain a focus on innovation. Always. Foster a culture that seeks new solutions and adapts to a changing world.
Never stop learning and adapting.
And consciously consider your legacy. What long-term impact do you want to have? How can your work, your resources, contribute to lasting societal benefit?
So wrapping up this deep dive, Rockefeller's technology, it really wasn't about gadgets at all, was it?
No, not in the modern sense. It was about innovative ways to organize, to optimize, to apply knowledge and resources strategically.
Whether building Standard Oil or building his foundations, that approach, well, it offers some really powerful lessons for innovators today, even in completely different fields.
Which leads to maybe a final thought for you listening. How can you apply similar principles, that relentless operational excellence, that strategic thinking in what you do?
Or even thinking bigger, what kind of long-term impact do you want your work, your resources to have down the line? Something to chew on.
Definitely. It's a huge story, and we've really just scratched the surface on some aspects.
For sure. Lots more to explore if this sparked your interest. Thanks for taking the deep dive with us today. Welcome to the deep dive. Today we're looking at John D. Rockefeller, but maybe not just the wealth aspect.
Right, not just the money.
We're digging into how he built it. Thinking him as a master, like the technology of his time.
Exactly. Operational efficiency, strategic integration. These were his tools, like process innovation on a massive scale.
Yeah, absolutely. And for this deep dive, we've pulled from, well, quite a few places. History sites, the Rockefeller Foundation itself, financial experts.
A good mix. And the aim is to see how his approach, stage by stage, showed these, technology skills. What did he gain? And crucially, what can you, listening today, take away from it all?
We're tracing it through about 7 key phases.
Sounds good. Where do we start?
Let's dive right into stage 1. His early days, getting into the oil rush. He was born 1839, upstate New York, but the family moved to Cleveland.
Right, Cleveland's key later on.
And even as a kid, he seemed pretty industrious. Raising turkeys, selling candy. Sounds like the classic story.
But the first real job, that's interesting. At 16, assistant bookkeeper for a produce firm in Cleveland.
And apparently he was really good at figuring out transportation costs.
See, that's it. Even then,
Yeah.
that little detail shows that operational thinking, that focus on logistics and efficiency, it's foundational.
So he gets that experience. Then at 20, this is 1859, he starts his own produce commission business with partners.
And the timing with the Civil War.
Hmm.
Wow. Demand for food and supplies went through the roof. They apparently made huge profits, like $450,000 in the first year.
That's serious money back then.
Yeah.
And that success likely set him up for the big pivot.
Which was?
1863. He invests in a Cleveland oil refinery. Enters the game.
The pivotal moment. Okay, so looking at just this early stage, what are those signs of his tech skills?
Well, like you said, that knack for calculating transport costs. That's early logistics focus.
Definitely one.
And two, jumping into oil refining when it was still pretty new.
Yeah.
Identifying that emerging market.
Good point. Spotting the wave.
And three, doing it with partners right away. Understanding he needed collaboration, needed capital to scale.
Makes sense. And the benefits in this phase?
Well, the money, obviously. That $450K gave him a launch pad.
Financial freedom.
Plus, that bookkeeping job gave